The ships came on a Tuesday morning, blocking out the sun across every major city on Earth. Commander Zixith of the Hegemony Fleet gazed down at the blue planet through the viewing portal of his flagship, the Dominion's Edge. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he studied the primitive world below. "Such a backward species," he muttered to his aide, Lieutenant Krelax. "Look at them scurrying around like insects. No unified government, no advanced technology, still burning fossil fuels. This will be the easiest conquest in hegemony history." The hegemony had ruled over 47 star systems, bringing order to countless chaotic worlds. Their method was simple and effective: demonstrate overwhelming power, demand surrender, install a puppet government, and harvest resources. Species that complied lived comfortable lives as servants. Those that resisted were eliminated. Zixith activated the planetary communication array. His message would be broadcast simultaneously to every electronic device on Earth, translated into every human language by their advanced AI systems. "People of Earth," his voice boomed across the planet, reaching televisions, radios, phones, and computers everywhere. "I am Commander Zixith of the Galactic Hegemony. Your primitive civilization has been selected for integration into our empire. You have 72 of your hours to surrender unconditionally. Lay down all weapons, disband your militaries, and prepare to serve. Resistance is futile and will result in your extinction." The message ended with footage from other conquered worlds, showing the destruction of cities that had dared to fight back. Entire continents turned to glass. Populations reduced to ash in minutes. In Washington, D.C., President Sarah Chen stared at the screens in the Situation Room. The Joint Chiefs sat around her, faces grim. Similar scenes were playing out in Moscow, Beijing, London, and every other capital city on Earth. "Options?" she asked quietly. General Martinez shook his head. "Our best missiles can't even reach them. They're positioned just outside our atmosphere. We've tried everything: nuclear weapons, conventional missiles, even our experimental railguns. Nothing gets through their shields." "What about negotiations?" "They've ignored every attempt at communication since the ultimatum," Secretary of State Williams replied. No response to any diplomatic channels. Meanwhile, in a small apartment in Mumbai, Dr. Priya Sharma was analyzing the alien broadcast with equipment she'd built in her garage. As a former ISRO engineer turned independent researcher, she'd spent years studying theoretical physics and xenobiology. What she discovered in the alien signal made her blood run cold. The aliens weren't just threatening Earth. Hidden in the transmission data were detailed scans of every major population center, military installation, and resource deposit on the planet. They'd been watching humanity for months, maybe years, preparing for this moment. But Priya noticed something else. The scans showed gaps. Rural areas, underground facilities, isolated communities scattered across the globe had somehow been missed or deemed unimportant. The aliens were making the classic mistake of every empire throughout history. They underestimated their enemies. In a coal mine in West Virginia, shift foreman Jake Rodriguez was leading his crew deep underground when the announcement reached them through their emergency radio system. The miners emerged to find a world in chaos. Government officials fled cities, military forces scrambled helplessly, and millions of civilians packed highways trying to escape to anywhere that felt safe. But Jake had served 3 tours in Afghanistan before an IED ended his military career. He knew something about fighting overwhelming odds. As he watched the alien ships hovering motionless in the sky, he made a decision that would change everything. "Boys," he told his crew, "looks like we're going back underground. But this time, we're not mining coal." Dr. Kenji Nakamura was in his laboratory at Tokyo University when the world changed forever. As one of the leading experts in quantum computing and digital warfare, he immediately recognized the sophistication of the alien technology. Their translation systems, their ability to hijack every communication network simultaneously, their perfect coordination across the globe. It was impressive. It was also vulnerable. Every advanced system had weaknesses. The more complex the technology, the more potential points of failure. Kenji began downloading every piece of data he could about the alien transmission, planning to take it underground to his hidden research facility in the mountains. In London, former SAS Captain Emily Foster was coordinating the evacuation of Parliament when she received an encrypted message on her old military channels. Similar messages were going out to Special Forces veterans around the world. Someone was organizing a resistance. The message was simple. They expect us to surrender. They expect us to break. They don't know humans. Rally point coordinates attached. Bring what you can carry. Tell no one who might compromise the mission. As the 72-hour deadline approached, the world's governments prepared for inevitable defeat. Military leaders spoke of honor in surrender. Politicians crafted speeches about cooperation with their new overlords, and news broadcasts showed footage of alien ships that seemed invincible. But in mines and caves, in hidden laboratories and forgotten bunkers, something else was happening. Humans were doing what humans had always done when faced with impossible odds. They were refusing to give up. The hegemony had conquered 47 star systems, but they had never faced anything like humanity. They had studied human military capabilities, analyzed government structures, and calculated resource extraction potential. What they hadn't considered was the human spirit. They didn't understand that humans had spent their entire evolutionary history fighting against extinction. Ice ages, plagues, natural disasters, wars that should have ended their species, humanity had survived them all not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through stubborn refusal to surrender. As the deadline expired and Commander Zixith prepared to accept Earth's inevitable surrender, he had no idea that his perfect conquest was about to become the hegemony's worst nightmare. The resistance was already born. It was growing in the darkness, hidden from alien sensors, fueled by something the hegemony had never encountered in their previous conquests, the absolute conviction that freedom was worth any price. In bunkers around the world, humans were preparing to show the galaxy what happened when you tried to rule over a species that had never learned how to kneel. Commander Zixith stood in his command center, confusion evident on his reptilian features. The deadline had passed 6 hours ago. According to hegemony protocol, the humans should have either surrendered completely or been reduced to radioactive ash. Instead, something unprecedented was happening. "Sir," Lieutenant Krelax reported, his voice uncertain, "we're receiving partial surrender communications from multiple human governments, but our sensors are detecting massive population movements into underground locations. This doesn't match any conquest pattern in our database." Zixith's 4 eyes focused on the tactical display. Major cities were indeed surrendering, their leaders broadcasting compliance messages. But something felt wrong. In their previous conquests, surrender meant immediate, total submission. Here, government officials spoke of cooperation while their military forces seemed to be disappearing. "Deploy occupation forces to the capital cities," Zixith ordered. "Establish control points and begin resource extraction protocols." What the hegemony forces found when they landed changed everything. The surrender had been a facade. Government buildings stood empty except for skeleton crews of officials who had volunteered to act as decoys. Military bases contained outdated equipment and conscripts who had been left behind to maintain the illusion of defeat. The real leadership, the real military forces, and most importantly, the real resistance had vanished underground. In the abandoned coal mine in West Virginia, Jake Rodriguez's operation had grown from 12 miners to over 300 people. Engineers, soldiers, scientists, teachers, doctors, farmers, anyone with skills useful for survival and warfare had found their way to the growing network of underground bases. Dr. Priya Sharma had arrived 2 days after the deadline, carrying hard drives full of data about alien technology and a plan that seemed impossible. She stood before the assembled group in the main cavern, illuminated by LED lights, powered by generators running on coal and methane from the mine itself. The aliens made several critical mistakes, she explained, pointing to diagrams projected on the cavern wall. First, they assumed our surrender was genuine. Second, they believe they understand our technology level. Third, and most importantly, they think like every other advanced civilization they've conquered. Jake crossed his arms. Meaning? They think vertically. Space-based civilization, energy-based warfare, orbital superiority. They've never fought an enemy that thinks horizontally, an enemy that goes underground. Dr. Nakamura, who had arrived with quantum computing equipment salvaged from his laboratory, stepped forward. I've been analyzing their communication protocols. Their ships maintain constant data links with each other and with their command structure in space. It's how they coordinate perfectly across the planet. Can we hack it? Asked Captain Foster. She'd brought 47 former Special Forces operators with her, along with weapons and equipment they'd liberated from abandoned military depots. Not directly, but I found something interesting. Their technology is quantum-based, which means it's susceptible to quantum interference. If we can generate the right frequency patterns... Priya's eyes lit up. We could create dead zones, areas where their technology fails. Exactly. But we'd need significant power generation and precise timing across multiple locations. That's when Jake smiled for the first time since the invasion began. Lady, you're talking to people who've been blasting through mountains and powering heavy machinery for decades. Power generation? That's just another day at the office. Over the following weeks, the underground resistance spread like roots through soil. Every abandoned mine shaft, subway tunnel, natural cave system, and underground facility became part of a growing network. Communications ran through hardened fiber optic cables and old-fashioned radio systems that the aliens couldn't easily track. The hegemony occupation forces were experiencing problems they'd never encountered before. Their energy weapons, devastating against surface targets, were useless against underground positions. Their sensors, designed to detect space-based threats and surface installations, couldn't penetrate deep enough to map the tunnel networks. More troubling were the attacks, not massive military assaults that could be countered with orbital bombardment, but small, precise strikes that came from underground and vanished back into the Earth before response forces could react. In New York, a squad of alien soldiers securing a resource extraction point simply disappeared. Security footage showed them on patrol one moment, then static. When backup arrived, they found empty armor and weapons scattered around a newly opened manhole cover. In London, alien communication arrays began failing randomly. Technical crews would arrive to find sophisticated equipment reduced to melted slag, apparently destroyed by some kind of electromagnetic pulse generated from below. In Tokyo, the aliens' quantum processing center experienced a cascading system failure that took down their regional command network for 6 hours. The attack had come through the sewage system, using the city's own infrastructure against them. Commander Zixith was beginning to understand that this conquest was unlike any other. The humans weren't fighting a conventional war. They were fighting like prey animals who had suddenly become predators, using every advantage their home environment provided. Sir, Krelax reported during a strategy session, we've lost contact with 17 surface installations in the last week. Orbital scans show no sign of major human military activity, but our ground forces are reporting constant harassment from unknown hostiles. Unknown hostiles? Zixith's voice carried a dangerous edge. Clarify. Small groups, sir. They appear from underground tunnels, strike quickly, then disappear. Our energy weapons can't target them effectively in enclosed spaces. They seem to know our technology's limitations better than we do. That was the terrifying truth. The humans were learning. In the West Virginia Command Center, Dr. Sharma had established what she called the Technical Intelligence Division. Every piece of alien equipment recovered from raids was brought here for analysis. The humans were reverse engineering hegemony technology with frightening speed. Their personal shields, she explained to Jake and Captain Foster, are designed to deflect energy weapons and high-velocity projectiles, but they have a resonance frequency. If we hit them with the right sonic pattern, she demonstrated with a captured alien helmet. A device that looked like it belonged in a mining operation generated a specific sound frequency, and the helmet's protective field flickered and failed. "You built a sonic disruptor out of mining equipment?" Foster asked, impressed. "Mining equipment is just tools for breaking things," Jake replied. "We've been perfecting the art of breaking things for centuries." The resistance was also growing in ways the aliens couldn't quantify. Every successful raid brought new recruits. Every alien defeat inspired more humans to join the underground networks. Every day that passed proved that humanity wouldn't be conquered easily. Dr. Nakamura's quantum interference project was nearing completion. Across the globe, resistance cells had built resonance generators using everything from subway transformers to hydroelectric plant equipment. When activated simultaneously, they would create a planetary-wide quantum dead zone. "The aliens will lose all their technological advantages," he explained during a global resistance conference conducted through encrypted radio links. "Their shields, their communications, their weapons, everything dependent on quantum processing will fail." "For how long?" asked a voice from the Moscow cell. "Unknown. Maybe minutes, maybe hours. But it will give us a window." Captain Foster had been coordinating with military resistance cells worldwide. Former soldiers, current Special Forces operatives who had refused surrender orders, even entire military units that had gone underground were preparing for what they called Liberation Day. "When their technology fails," she announced, "we hit every alien installation simultaneously. We've identified key targets, command centers, communication arrays, and their primary resource extraction facilities. We destroy their ability to coordinate and their reason for being here." In his flagship above Earth, Commander Zixith was receiving reports that defied all hegemony military doctrine. Human resistance wasn't decreasing over time, it was growing stronger. Their technology wasn't remaining static, it was evolving, adapting, improving. For the first time in his career, Zixith was beginning to doubt the inevitability of hegemony victory. The humans were fighting a war unlike anything in the Galactic Empire's experience. They were fighting from below, from within, from the very ground beneath the aliens' feet. And they were winning. The countdown to Liberation Day had begun, and the hegemony had no idea that their perfect conquest was about to become their greatest defeat. The humans had learned that you don't have to be stronger than your enemy to win. You just have to be more determined, more creative, and more willing to sacrifice everything for freedom. The underground war was about to become a revolution that would shake the foundations of the galaxy itself. Liberation Day began at 00:00 GMT, coordinated across every time zone on Earth. In bunkers and tunnels spanning 6 continents, human resistance fighters initiated the largest coordinated military operation in the species' history. Dr. Nakamura's fingers hovered over the activation switch for the quantum interference array. Around the globe, similar switches waited in the hands of scientists, engineers, and miners who had transformed their knowledge into weapons of liberation. All stations— "This is command," Captain Foster's voice crackled through the resistance communication network. "Quantum arrays ready. Strike teams in position. Remember, we get one shot at this. Make it count." Jake Rodriguez stood in his command center, surrounded by monitors showing feed from resistance cells worldwide. Former coal miners stood beside nuclear physicists. Special Forces veterans worked alongside computer programmers, and farmers coordinated with rocket scientists. The underground war had created the most diverse military force in human history. Activation in 3, 2, 1, execute! The quantum interference began simultaneously across the planet. In hidden facilities powered by everything from coal generators to solar arrays, massive resonance devices came online, broadcasting frequencies calculated to disrupt the alien quantum processing systems. Commander Zixith was reviewing invasion protocols when every system on his flagship suddenly went dark. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across the command center as hegemony technology failed on a scale he'd never imagined possible. "Report!" he demanded, but Lieutenant Krellax was staring at dead control panels with all 4 eyes wide in disbelief. "Sir, everything's offline. Navigation, weapons, life support backup systems, communications with the fleet. I've never seen anything like this." Across Earth's skies, alien vessels went dark. Their energy shields flickered and died. Their weapon systems failed. Their communication networks went silent. For the first time since arriving at Earth, the hegemony fleet was vulnerable. On the surface, alien ground forces experienced the same catastrophic system failures. Personal shields deactivated, energy weapons became useless metal sculptures, and their communication devices fell silent. Suddenly, the technologically superior invaders found themselves nearly blind and defenseless. That's when the real attack began. In New York, Captain Maria Santos led her squad up through subway maintenance tunnels directly into the alien command center in Manhattan. The Resistance had spent weeks mapping these facilities, and now they moved with precision born of careful planning and desperate necessity. "Remember," she radioed to her team, "their personal armor is still effective against small arms. Sonic disruptors first, then conventional weapons. The mining-derived sonic devices proved devastatingly effective. Alien soldiers, suddenly stripped of their technological advantages, faced humans armed with modified industrial equipment and the fury of the oppressed. In London, former SAS operatives emerged from Thames Tunnel maintenance shafts to assault the alien resource extraction facility at Canary Wharf. The complex operation they'd planned for weeks unfolded with military precision. Dr. Priya Sharma watched from the West Virginia Command Center as reports flooded in from around the world. The quantum interference was holding, but she knew they had limited time. "How long can we maintain the effect?" Jake asked, watching status displays that showed resistance operations across 6 continents. "Unknown," Priya replied honestly. "Their quantum systems are trying to adapt. We might have minutes or hours, but they will eventually break through our interference. That's why the human strategy was built for speed. Hit hard, hit fast, achieve objectives before the aliens could recover. In Beijing, resistance fighters used the city's vast network of underground passages and maintenance tunnels to strike at alien facilities with coordinated precision. The invaders, accustomed to fighting technologically inferior enemies in open warfare, were completely unprepared for urban guerrilla tactics executed from below. Dr. Nakamura's technical teams had identified the critical targets, the aliens' quantum processing cores that coordinated their entire fleet. Destroying these would cripple their ability to function as a unified force even after they restored basic systems. In a facility beneath Tokyo, his team worked frantically to maintain the quantum interference while simultaneously preparing their final gambit. They'd built what amounted to a quantum virus, a signal that would spread through the aliens' restored network and cause cascading failures. "The interference is degrading," one of his technicians reported. "Alien systems are beginning partial restoration." "How much longer?" "Maybe 30 minutes before full system recovery." Captain Foster was coordinating the assault on the primary alien command vessel that had landed outside Geneva. Her international team of Special Forces veterans had trained for this specific mission using intelligence gathered from weeks of careful surveillance. "Target the central processing core," she commanded as her team moved through the alien ship's corridors. The hegemony vessel, designed for space combat and orbital bombardment, was poorly suited for close quarters fighting against determined humans. Without their energy shields and advanced weapons, alien soldiers found themselves facing enemies who had spent their entire evolutionary history perfecting the art of violence. Humans who had survived ice ages and plagues, who had fought countless wars against their own species, who had learned to kill effectively with stone tools and never forgotten those lessons. The resistance fighters moved through alien facilities like a force of nature. They used industrial equipment as weapons, mining explosives as breaching charges, and communication systems jerry-rigged from civilian electronics for coordination. Every piece of human technology, originally designed for construction and communication, had been weaponized by people who understood that survival sometimes required destroying everything that threatened freedom. Commander Zixith finally managed to restore partial communications with his fleet. The reports he received shattered his understanding of warfare itself. "Sir," came a panicked voice from the Geneva ground team. "The humans! They're inside the ship! They're destroying everything! Our weapons don't function in these confined spaces, and they seem to know exactly where our critical systems are located." "Impossible! How could they have such detailed intelligence?" "Sir, I think they've been studying us as thoroughly as we studied them." That was the terrifying truth. While the hegemony had analyzed human military capabilities and government structures, the humans had been analyzing hegemony psychology, technology, and tactical doctrine. They'd identified every weakness and planned countermeasures for every alien advantage. In Moscow, resistance fighters had emerged from the metro system to seize the alien administrative center. Russian special forces, working alongside civilian volunteers, executed an operation that demonstrated humanity's greatest weapon: adaptability. The aliens had prepared for conventional warfare against a space-capable civilization. They'd never considered facing an enemy that would abandon surface civilization entirely and wage war from underground using improvised weapons and tactics that no military academy in the galaxy had ever studied. As the quantum interference finally began to collapse, Dr. Nakamura initiated his final protocol. The quantum virus spread through the restoring alien network like wildfire, corrupting data, destroying coordination protocols, and ensuring that even when their technology came back online, it would be crippled and unreliable. Around the world, resistance teams began their extraction procedures. They'd accomplished their primary objectives: the destruction of alien command and control systems, the elimination of key resource extraction facilities, and the demonstration that humanity would never accept subjugation. But the real victory wasn't tactical. It was psychological. Commander Zixith stood in his damaged command center, staring at reports from across the planet. In a single coordinated operation, the humans had proven that the hegemony wasn't invincible. They'd turned the aliens' own technological sophistication against them and fought a war that defied every principle of galactic military doctrine. For the first time in hegemony history, a conquered species had not only resisted, but had actually damaged the Empire's forces significantly. Word of this defeat would spread across the galaxy, inspiring other oppressed worlds and undermining the hegemony's reputation for invincibility. "Sir," Lieutenant Krell-Ax reported quietly, "we're receiving communication requests from the hegemony High Command. They want status reports." Zixith knew what those reports would mean. A species that could inflict this level of damage while supposedly conquered was too dangerous to control. The hegemony would either have to commit massive additional resources to Earth's subjugation, resources that were needed elsewhere in the Empire, or consider other options. In the West Virginia Command Center, Jake Rodriguez received final reports from resistance cells worldwide. The operation had succeeded beyond their most optimistic projections. Alien forces across the planet were in disarray, their command structure was crippled, and their technological advantages had been neutralized. "What now?" Dr. Sharma asked. Captain Foster answered for all of them. "Now, we prepare for their response. This was just the first battle, but we've proven something important today." "What's that?" "That humans don't surrender. Ever. And that any species that tries to rule us had better be prepared for the fight of their lives." The liberation of Earth had begun not with superior firepower or advanced technology, but with the simple human refusal to accept defeat. The underground war had become a revolution, and that revolution was about to spread across the galaxy. The hegemony had tried to rule over humanity. Instead, they'd awakened something far more dangerous: the human capacity for absolute resistance. And once that resistance was awakened, it would never sleep again. In bunkers and tunnels around the world, humans continued their preparations. The aliens might regroup. They might call for reinforcements. They might even decide to destroy Earth rather than control it. But they would never again underestimate the species that had learned to wage war from the darkness beneath their feet, using nothing but determination, creativity, and the unbreakable conviction that freedom was worth any price. The galaxy would never be the same.